Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third night of the Allen Family Residency at Texas Tech and wherever you find yourself tonight. A special treat for you tonight as we sit down with Bale Creek Allen to discuss The Artist is Gallerist. Remember, this presentation is brought to you by the Terry and Joe Harvey Allen Center for Creative Studies. This webinar is being recorded, and please hit the Q&A button and type in your questions, and Bale will be around after the conversation to answer anything you might ask.
After high school and really my whole senior year, I was pretty much lost. I knew that I wanted to do something creative. I thought I'd be either a visual artist, I thought I might be a musician, I thought I'd be an actor. I always visualized myself doing something creative. That I pretty much knew. I wasn't out ruling out the idea of doing anything else either, because I also had this balance and this idea that, I like nice things. I want to have a certain lifestyle. I want to be able to afford certain things. But in the ideal world or the fantasy world, as someone young and ambitious and confused, the one thing I was not confused about is that I was pretty sure I wanted to have a creative existence. And that's important for visual artists to maintain that throughout. And I don't think that making a living and being creative always have to be I think you can do those things side by side. You can separate the two, I think. But for me, I always saw it as kind of one thing. And I had that example growing up and the environment I grew up with. I saw that as a reality, as a lifestyle, to be able to make art and somehow magically make a living doing it. And this is possible. And, but I think for me, it took steps, and it was really challenging. And it was really hard. You have to have a thick ass hide to be a visual artist for a living, period. It is not for the weak. It's in terms of the inconsistencies, the erratic, it's all over the place. So you have to create your own kind of diligence, you have to be motivated enough to have your own schedule. Even in my studio in art school, I had a time clock. I literally bought a time clock and punched it. I'm like, I need to do 40 hours. I got to be legit, and full time. And so before going to the museum school, I moved to LA. And we'll back up. I was inspired by an artist named Boyd Wright, and he was a carpenter. And I kind of abandoned my idea for going to like a regular college, like all my friends were going to, and I was going to apprentice with them. And about 6 or 7 months before I graduated high school, he died of a heart attack. And that put me kind of in a tailspin. As you can imagine, I'm a senior, everyone's already committed to their plans, and I had a plan, and it was not conventional. It was a plan of following my heart and doing something creative, and he was going to teach me everything, that I could soak up. And so that went awry, and that's really typical of like the existence of being an artist anyway. From that point on, it was kind of like a tailspin that I was a part of, that I tried to keep hanging on to certain things. And so it was like I moved to LA with $70 and no plan. And the first day I woke up, I rode my bike from Hollywood all the way to Westwood for a busboy job. Worked the job, rode back. And from that day on, it was like I worked 6 or 7 days a week for years for the rest of my life as a busboy or a waiter. And that's how I paid the bills. But all along the way, in between that, in LA, I was trying to pursue acting, and it kind of just stripped the soul out of me being in LA, even at a young age of 18. I was just like, I'm not into it. And I always thought that I wanted to go to art school. So one thing I did consistently from high school up until, well, I still do, but high school, I drew pictures. And I was doing that in LA when I was in between, working shifts. I just drew most of the time. And so Bucka, my brother, was at Berkeley College of Music in Boston. And I was entertaining the idea of going to an art school. And I had made up my mind. I was like, I'm going. And I thought I'd go to Cal Arts or San Francisco Art Institute. Pretty much I narrowed it down to, all right, I'm going to try to make this happen. But I had been in California my whole life. So I wanted to change. And I didn't really have a plan. And drove my truck to Lubbock and then hopped on a plane and sent my art via Greyhound to Boston. And I hadn't been accepted to school. I hadn't gotten in. It was a lot of uncertainty. And I had a conversation with my brother. I'm like, dude, I'm moving there anyway. It's like, let's go. I need to change. And so when I got there, my artwork did not get there. The Greyhound bus with all of my portfolio from every drawing and writing I'd ever done in my life never showed up. MIA, gone. So I was screwed, essentially. I mean, back then you don't have a cell phone, you don't document anything. There's very few photographs of me in high school that, they're probably in someone's, photo sleeve or something, So the accessibility, the way to document things, I didn't have a backup. That was the real stuff, and I was literally going to show them my portfolio, and it was gone. So I went to the museum school and explained my situation. And they're like, well, you're going to have to at least write something or do something. So I literally went home with the pencil and paper and wrote anything that I had done, which was basically nothing. A few plays with my family, which were incredible, but I tapped on that. And then I wrote a couple poems. I literally wrote some new poems and said, I love to write, I love to draw. And I didn't really give them any drawings. It was a piece of paper pleading my case, like, I need to go here, please. And so I got a phone call on a payphone, and they said, you've been accepted to the museum school. Congratulations, blah, blah, blah. You're required, you're going to have to do this course and this course, And so I was like, I was psyched. Like from that moment on, I was like, all right, it's on. I literally thought it's on. And so I went to the museum school, checked in, did all that. And the big hustle there was studio space. And it was a hustle because there were 30 studios in the entire school. And that's prime real estate. And you needed a studio to work, whether you were in school or not. That was like extension of my living space. And so I did all these drawings, like fast, and they were graphite drawings. They were like it was like really the first body of work other than a collection of all the things I had done in high school in my portfolio. The second body of work were these graphite drawings that were kind of obsessive compulsive and really meticulous. And they were these new ideas. They were like these dream drawings and just stream of consciousness. And I got a small, you've seen them. You see them in the art stores. You go to Tech, you go to the student body store, and you see those black things. You're like, wow, those are cool. And it's like just a blank slate to fill up with whatever. And I filled the whole thing up. And I was really proud of these drawings. I was like, damn, it's like something got into me once I got accepted. Like I crossed the plane, a threshold of like, this is my direction. This is my focus. And it really that was it. From that point on, it still is. And so the museum school was highly competitive. And one of the prime things was to be a painter there so you could have a studio. And I showed them there were like five, I think there were 5 painting teachers that had maybe 6 studios each, whatever, do the math. And I showed them to them. And at the end of the day, I had secured 2 studios, not one, but I had my choice of teachers. And I was just like, it was like instant kind of the first time, like my hard work. Number one, I was that focused and it felt so effortless because I was just so locked in on it. And in school, it had never been easy for me. I always did things the hard way. I shot myself in the foot as many times as I could. And creatively and somehow went around the way I was supposed to do everything. But art school, I could do things the way they were supposed to be done there and succeed. And that was like this new experience for me. So it gave me this extra boost of confidence. And just being in that environment changed everything for me. I mean, it just, it kind of it was a launching pad for the rest of my life. There's highs and lows. The highs are incredible. Even within the context, and any of you who are visual artists or have done a show who have put tons into it, like on the front end of a show is like maybe a 3-hour opening. Okay. And you spend 3 months to 2 years on a body of work, and then you show it. And then it's over. And the next day you wake up and it's that postpartum kind of mentality of like, man, now I have to start all over again. So that's just a glimpse into the sense of it's a roller coaster. And the idea of being self-employed, anything poses this challenge. But being a self-employed visual artist is one of the worst things in terms of the roller coaster, because it's the first thing to go in a bad economy, and it's the last thing to rise. So when things are really good, it's when people are buying art. Even now during COVID, I'm in Texas, and wherever you are regionally, you pay attention to what type of collectors you have. Or as a gallerist, I'm more in tune with this because I feel an obligation to the artists I'm showing to really work really hard and try to sell their work. And there's oil people here, and there's entertainment, and there's, let's say oil and music are kind of exclusive to where I'm at. And then there's the standbys that are always there, okay? Lawyers, always there as collector base. The medical field, doctors, usually you could say entertainment. But there's the ones that aren't. The real estate people, that depends on the time. Oil people, depends on the price of the barrel. The .com people, depends on whether the bubbles burst or not, which happened, And it's, so right now tech's doing really well. And during COVID, those things shift. But even the people with money are not collecting art. So you have to be you have to be creative in the ways that you try to survive or make money. And I always say it feels like I'm being chased by a dragon my whole life, a fire-breathing dragon. And sometimes I could get out ahead from it to where, okay, I can walk. And sometimes, man, I'm running. And if you get caught by it, that means, hey, you're going back over and you're going to go work a regular job. And that's okay. That's okay. You won't always be there. You might be there. Who cares? Number one, who cares about what any of your friends think or what society thinks? They don't care about what you're doing. They care about their own shit. They don't care about where you're at. So it's important to keep that like solid, I think, as an artist. But I'm not going to lie and say that it's like this easy existence, but you also can be smart. One thing I advise to every art student who wants to be a visual artist is try to own your own studio. I mean, I think there ought to be a business 101 class and maybe real estate for every artist, because if you're paying rent, you're not putting money in your own pocket. If you own your own studio, if you own anything, every month you're writing a check, you're giving it to someone, but you're really putting it in your own equity and your own pocket. And that can give you a peace of mind. And that's like a built-in artist 401k, is owning your own studio. So that's important. And I think if you're smart along the way with saving your money or stockpiling, you could plan for the low times and you could spread it out a little. And there's also ways to supplement your income. It's not all exclusively art. Some of the greatest artists in the world teach to have their only steady base of income. I can name some of the biggest artists in the world. They have teaching jobs, and there's a perception that they're made. They have these big New York studios and huge, champagne and caviar shows. that happens, but what happens 300 days in between the year other than that? It's existence like anyone else. I think it's, it's like I tell my kids, like when they were trying to pick a college to go to, I'm like, well, try to visualize a place where you see yourself living, also, you know, if certain things don't work out, you're moving to a place and that's going to be your environment for a while. Pay attention to your environment. If you hate, 15 degrees below zero, don't go to Maine for college, and so I think that's important. I don't think society's going to tell you, you're an artist, you go to New York, you're an actor, you go to LA, you're a musician, you go to Austin. There's like these rules that mean nothing, that people that, that society just kind of says, and they make sense. And in some ways, those things can be incredibly beneficial. But I kind of look at things like, again, I go in terms of what makes you happy. And for me, the decision to moving to Texas after art school, when a lot of my friends were like, we'll see you in New York. And I'm like, yeah. And I would go to New York often on the train to New York with friends and go see shows and go back to Boston. It was close. And it was amazingly inspiring. But it's like, for me, the idea of having a 100 square foot apartment in a concrete jungle didn't appeal to me. For me, the idea of coming to Texas and having a studio for $200 a month and being able to play soccer on the weekends and swim, and every second or third month have the flexibility and affordability to fly to Europe or go to India, a lot more appealing to me. So it's all about there's not a right or wrong. And people will try to tell you that. So in some cases, for some of you, even your parents will tell you that, and your professors will tell you certain things. But the bottom line, you got to take ownership completely of your own life in the way that you work and how you want to work and the way that you live. And I think that's really important. There is no right or wrong way to do art. Number one, in school, professors are going to tell you and those are great tools. They are only tools. They are exercises in learning certain things, but they are only one small, tiny fraction of the bigger picture. And I think that it's really important to be true to yourself. And if you want to go to some field in Kansas and work out of a barn, then do it and go and make badass art. One benefit about being in the middle of nowhere is there's no interruptions. I think our environments, as every one of you in school, every one of us, we live in different environments. We might live in the same city, but some people have more money than others. Some people have a big apartment. Some people have roommates. Some people live in a warehouse. Some live in a little crappy apartment. And those environments dictate the type of work you're able to do. And if that's restricting in any way, then you have an obligation to what you're doing to figure out what's going to work better,
Hey, and we are back with Bale Allen doing some supplemental work on the previous talk and some of the videos that you've already seen. Bale, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to try to smile and be more upbeat.
Well, it is 2020, so I think there's grace to be given for
I'm wearing this to kind of show the timing. I'm not like some fancy Hollywood movie director because I can't stand this look.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, man. Welcome to COVID times.
I love that.
I am a positive person. I think, it's important for all of us to try to get through it with some kind of laughter.
Absolutely.
A long way. So.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that you and I wanted to pick up on a little bit is sort of, what kids should be doing in school. Like, what are some of the processes or rules or things they should be focused on right now while they're in college?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. And then I was just thinking there's some things that might be helpful that I learned when I was in school that some of the things take longer to learn than others, but it's just a little bit of insight maybe. And it's an observation. Like when I got to school, one of the first things I learned about being in art school is how different the environment was from any other school environment I had been in. And so that kind of created this comfort zone for me.
Yeah.
And so just like taking it in and being a part of that environment it gives you kind of this, it makes you comfortable, and some people could be intimidated by it, but I think it's the wrong approach. Is instead of being intimidated by other artists that are, because it can be kind of cutthroat a little bit, it's like everyone's kind of comparing their work to the other students and whatnot.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it can be inspiring, though. I think it's important to try to connect with, when you see someone doing really great art, and something, someone onto something, or they have that magic more than anyone else, and you can tell. I would encourage you to reach out to that person, surround yourself with that person, try to get to know them, try to become friends with that person, because it's like those are the kind of people you want to rub off on you. It's like, kind of, it's like anything, you surround yourself with, you, you know, with good people that'll rub off on you. If you,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, and you touched on that a little bit too, about how like those relationships are really important to form. And I think, as someone who teaches kids, I see a lot of times that rivalry, but really the kids that succeed the most are the ones that jump in with each other and make
yeah,
work together or learn from each other.
yeah, and it's fun. It's actually a lot of fun to, be almost competitive. It's like you'll find someone that drives you and you drive them. It's like Matisse and Picasso. I mean, it's like, those guys mimicked each other, and they were both incredible artists, but it's almost like without one, you wouldn't have the other in the same way. It would have been a different journey for both of them,
Yeah,
kind of like Diego Rivera and Frida, or I'm just trying to think of like, and maybe those are not good examples at all, but for me, I realized when I left art school, there were certain people I wish I had spent more time with
mm,
and gotten to know better. Because to this day, some of their videos or some of their projects or pieces, I was like, they still resonate with me. And that's usually how I determine what's good art and what's not. It stays with me or makes an impact or an impression. And so those are the kind of people that I lost touch with, that I wish, and some of them I didn't even know their name. But if I had been more, instead of in my own, like focused on my own thing. So I think what I did that I wouldn't say I regret, but I wish I did more of when I was in school, was being open a little more to taking in other people's things, instead of just so focused on working on mine, getting it better, which I think is very important. But, you know, I think you could do both, and it'll be,
yeah, there's definitely a push to see, when you see some other piece that someone did and you're like, dang, that is really great. It only really, if you put yourself in the right mindset, right, it only
yeah,
pushes you. It doesn't make you run away. If you really focus on what they did and how to get better and talk to them, then that's only going to push your work higher.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the same thing with teachers. And that's another thing that I really wanted to emphasize is, like if you're doing the real boring classes, or the exercise classes like trompe-l'oeil, or technical drawing, or something that you're just not really into, or what, it's like, those are just exercises and they will all benefit you. And I'm guilty of it, because when I was in school, I was just like, I was more focused on my own kind of vision. And I think every person's different that way. But I think to kind of tap into the balance that art school has to offer, you can still be intense and driven and work those extra hours and sneak into the studio late night and do all that stuff. But take advantage of all the resources that are at your fingertips. I mean, it's this incredible opportunity that you're in a university like Texas Tech that has incredible facilities. So if you're in that environment, you might not be in that environment ever again after that, to where you have all these things at your disposal. And I think that's really important. And another thing, I made an observation. There's a lot of students that are in art school for different reasons, and it's like, you know, I think it helps to kind of clarify. It's like I knew why I was there. I was there to become a better artist, like with the mindset that I want to make art for a living. But there were other people there that weren't there for that reason at all. They were there to get a 5-year teaching degree, and they just wanted to, and that's totally cool. It's like, but there's different ways to navigate school and get certain things out of it depending on what your focus is. Or and if you could have that kind of, I don't know if have that clarity, but kind of know, if you could figure that out, I think that'll help you in kind of the
Yeah.
decisions you make, you know.
That there's many paths, right? There's many different paths. Like just because you see other kids who are like, I'm going to go be an artist, there's nothing wrong with also having your own path. And so really
Yeah.
focusing and trying to figure that out, right, is important.
Yeah, and all of those things will, if, like I said, if you kind of take advantage of the whole spectrum, they're all going to benefit you somehow. It's like, so be open to everything, all the classes, be open to just putting yourself out there. Put yourself out there as much as you can.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing? I was
And
thinking, oh, like during process itself, um, it, we talked about this, but how all of the creative people have ideas floating around, and usually artists are executing some kind of creative thought process or idea. And the more you have, they're swirling around, and you pick and choose like what you want to focus on or where you want to delve into. But it's like through that process itself, just by having a good work ethic, which I know it sounds like I hammer it home, but the more hours you put in, just like doing anything, it's like Malcolm Gladwell, it's like 10,000 hour
yeah,
kind of rule. But there's some truth to that, because it's like you have to not necessarily go through the bad stuff to get to the good stuff, but also, even if you're doing great stuff right out of the gate, it's got, once you're in your studio and cranking and going and losing that sense of time, like once you're not a part of the equation, this is a really important thing that was like a revelation to me, because I used to be more, maybe ego was in the equation of making art, to where look what I can do. Like when I was young, I was like, look how I can paint, look how I can draw, or and I was more conscientious about the reaction I was going to get. Whereas now, like, it's not about what I do with my hands, it's about executing conceptual ideas
mhm,
and making them, and whether that requires my hands or collaboration or whatever it is, it's about losing myself. It's about whatever I'm working on taking over. It's like a blues man closing his eyes and in the pocket, in the groove.
yeah, yeah,
That's losing yourself. I say it's like an orgasm, basically. I mean, there's that sweet spot. And it's why you keep coming back. And when you're working on something, and we all know as artists, like when you're doing something that really excites you, like you're just like so excited about what you've just done, those are the moments that make it so gratifying. But I think the more that you work, the more those moments are possible. And and then the ideas, the doors just open themselves. The creative process presents in some cases wide open doors. For example, I went to and I'm kind of rambling again, but I went to Germany to do a residency, and I was invited to do a 3-month residency, and I could only commit to 2 weeks. So when I went over there, they had already been there working all summer, and it was for a big exhibition at a museum. And I was just like, man, I'll just bust it out when I get there. And I thought, well, I could bring art, that I already have or whatever. And then I just decided not to. And I showed up and hit the ground and responded to my environment. And I literally just started making art that was a response to where I was.
mm,
And the work itself, the objects that I found, the found object assemblages, they were so rich in content. So when you're in that moment, you realize it. You're like, why is that everything I touch at this moment working?
yeah,
So you can't get enough of it. And then you just it's like when I'm talking to my kids, and sometimes they're like a trap, mouths just locked shut, and then when they open up, it's like you're all ears and you're having this incredible flowing conversation about information, and it's good. Same thing with art. It's like the more you put yourself in that process, the more opportunity you have for these sweet spots to just happen, and that's where great stuff happens.
That's awesome. Another thing that you wanted to dive into a little bit, and that we talked a little bit about, but wanted to get further into, is that transition. Right, these students are wherever they are in their years, but they're going to graduate at some point, and it's not easy always to go from being a student to then being a professional artist. And you touched a little bit on that about doing the odd jobs, doing whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
But what's some good advice for that transition, to move through that transition from student and out of college?
Well, I think while you're in school, right before that transition, if there's juried shows like at your school and everything, try to participate in those, because it's the first like real experience of exhibit, kind of where you're dealing with the process of applying, for something, and you're seeing your work outside of your studio in a different environment that's legitimate, maybe, or that a well clean, well lit, like lighted space, you know. But it's I think I think that's important. And then when you get out, um, there's a formula that's helpful, that people talk about. Well, how do you make a living? And but basically approach it like any other job,
Hmm.
in the sense of, do I want to work part time? Do I want to be a part time artist? Am I going to work full time? Number one, say you're just, some other part of your life's better, and you want to do art, but you're not as serious about it, but you still want to keep painting or drawing or doing whatever you're doing. And so maybe that's 20 hours a week, and let's just say a regular work week's 40 hours. So if you want to be a full-time artist, focus on that. Focus, number one, on being an artist. If you have another job or whatever, you've had to have a job, that's cool. But ask yourself, how much, how much can I make an hour? What's my time worth? And if you're starting out, your hourly rate's not going to be as much as someone who's a lot higher,
Yeah.
who's more proven, who has a resume, who's done things. So let's just say you're going to pay yourself $20 an hour, $25 an hour. So when you're in your studio, keep a log of that. It,
Mm.
it's it. I don't. I did it only, and I couldn't do it for a long time because I'm just too erratic. But it was really good to see, like, to take a single piece and say, okay, this took me 5 hours. This took me 5 hours to work on, and then it cost me, expenses. You add your expenses. The frame was $200. The paint was $200. It's $400 in materials, and it was 5 hours at, $20 an hour. So do the math. And that's what you should charge. That's how you can establish a pricing technique for your work, or not a technique. This is a formula
Yeah.
where I think it's important when you price, because you're making a living as an artist. So you take, like an object, you take this piece, however long it took, the materials, and then you say, okay, I'm worth at least $20, $25 an hour. And then you do the math, and then that's the price of your piece. And that's a great way to start.
Yeah.
That's a great way to start. And when someone asks you, well, I don't understand how you do pricing, you want to incrementally raise your prices, but you want to be able to justify that every step of the way. And starting out of the gate, you should start low. You should try to circulate and sell work. And if you go right here and just make up some number, I've been in a coffee shop and I see this bad painting and it's like $5,000. I'm like, you're out of your mind. It's kind of like, how'd you come up with that number? Because art is subjective, and there are no rules on the business side or the art side, and which makes it a hard business model, the hardest in the world.
Yeah.
What other business model are you giving up 50% right out of the gates of everything you do? And you're doing the work. And so it's like, so, but you want to be able to justify your prices, and that's a good way to do it. And then I think the other thing is like lifestyle. Like I think it's important to not, and we touched on this a little, but to be confident enough to be okay with uh not necessarily making money, because I think if you can get rid of that out of the equation and you can create on a regular basis, the most important thing to being an artist is don't stop being an artist. You know, just because you're not totally making a living doing it or fully supporting, your best chance again of that actually happening is if you're in a good place with the work that you're doing. And so I think if you're happy focused on the work without having outside influences, that just don't feel pressured that you have to have all the success right out of the gate, because it's probably not going to happen, and you're going to set yourself up for, so don't have this big expectation, just I think there's a way to price your work and incrementally raise those prices, and also do a lot of juror museum, like show your work in places, even if you're not totally down with it. Be open to, it's visual art for a reason. So you want as many people to see what you're doing. Just like in school, when you're out in the real world, you're going to get real input. And
Yeah.
it's all very, very valid, whether you like it or not. It's real input from people. And so you could put your stuff in a coffee shop or in a bookstore or in some random alternative location. It doesn't have to be a museum. It doesn't have, and the more you do that, the more you're going to start understanding about, what you might need to do or what message your work is saying. And, you'll get a lot out of that. And I
Yeah.
think that's important. And then I think another thing that you can do coming right out of art school to exhibit is do like jurred exhibitions that you can, there's a list of them all over America, and they're jurred by curators and museum directors, like, and they do these shows, and you can apply for them, and that's a great way to approach it. Also residencies, even coming out of the gate, if you're coming out hungry and just wanting to be an artist, I know artists that live from residency to residency, and they'll go and stay 6 months or a year or a year and a half, set up, and they're living for free. They have a little per diem and they can work. And I know people that just, that's like that's how they do it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to make a living as an artist, and I just focus on rich life, not rich pocketbook, rich life, because that's gives you a lot of freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And to end here, to just go into another sort of transition too, is like uh, I want to hear a little bit about maybe what you're working on or what you're thinking about working on, or talk about some of the projects you have either just completed or something you got in the mixer
Yeah.
right now.
Well, I thought it was kind of fun. I put this little painting back here, and this is from art school. It's like 19
Great, that's awesome.
1989. And then this is something that I just did. And I thought it was kind of cool just to put them together. And we talk about like process. You're still the same person. Like I've changed in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, my approach and a lot of it's similar, And this is just like, it's a dish towel just with some paint on it. And I just like the way it looked, for no other reason than it's decorative or whatever. But for me, it's so deeper than that. And you look at it, I think it resonates something more than just a decorative piece. I think it's like any artist can relate to what they probably know what that means, like it's a palette or whatever. And for me, it captures a moment in time in my life. And that's the beautiful thing about art. Like art becomes kind of like a family member. If you grow up with one piece in your house or in your bedroom and you see it your whole life, then when you're away from it, you think about that, like
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
forever, you know, and that's cool. And then and this is an example of something that's totally fresh out of a body of work called My America that I'm almost finished doing. And this is a photograph of You can hardly tell, but it's bricks from schools and bricks from prisons,
Oh,
alternated school, prison, school, prison, school, prison, school, prison. And it's actually one of the few Photoshop type of prints have done just to achieve that. And it's a study photograph for a sculpture that I just envisioned doing, like this totem, like this tall, almost looked like a chimney made
yeah.
of school brick and prison brick alternated. And this whole body of work, My America, I've been working on for almost 4 years.
Wow.
And I've gone to all 50 states in the last three of them. And I drove my car, a lot of different projects. I rigged a motorcycle, an Indian Chief motorcycle with video cameras, and drove in the inner cities and rural areas in every city or every state in America. And that piece is going to be, and I'm not finished with this one yet, but I'm editing video now, working on the books for this work. But it's going to be a video room. It's a conceptual piece, but the motorcycle is going to be in there. And it's a video room of you're able to go through every state in America in 50 minutes. So it's basically 1 minute per state.
Wow,
And
that's
the
cool.
idea, that kind of the idea of the show was like all these questions about patriotism, and I'm a total patriot. It's like I'm happy to be an American, and I was thinking, but you know what? I consider myself well traveled. I've been to Europe. I've been to third world country. I mean, I consider myself like I've been everywhere and all over the U.S. And I hadn't. I was like, man, the majority of the states I haven't been to. And so then I kind of asked everyone in a room a couple times in groups, like, who's all been to every state in America? And maybe one guy. It's
Mhm.
like, so I had never. I consider myself a patriot, and I was born in America, and I'm like, I'm going to go to every state in my own country and see for myself. And that idea alone, which was like kind of a bucket list mixed with the idea of, hey, I'm going to achieve bucket list, but I'm also going to do a body of work about
Yeah.
it. So that kind of set it in motion. And then you could imagine with the subject matter of America and everything you're going to see and do, it's vast. It could be a lifetime's body of work and never end.
Mhm.
So then it comes to like editing, and then it's like,
Mhm.
what, how much can you do? And then economics come into play. How much can you afford, time wise, travel, all of that. So you kind of just start, honing in on specifics and come up with basically a game plan. And then ideas come as you go, and then you 86 ideas as you go, just based on practicality. Like one of the ideas for a great piece was, and we talk about artists and having ideas.
Yeah.
I've always got ideas. That's never been my problem. I got ideas, but it's like you can't possibly execute all of them. So, it's like the good ones float to the top, or the ones at the moment that you want to do for whatever reason. You're always doing something, but and then you could come back to them, which you do too. Like this kind of idea of a full circle of 35-year span
Yeah.
is kind of interesting because sometimes you dip into a mindset. But one of the ideas for a piece of My America that I wasn't able to do because I'd probably be a federal offense is if I wanted to cut out a highway line from every highway in the country,
Yeah.
just like a yellow highway line, cut it out and put like treasures in there or video monitor one and document the mile markers like a map. So all the site specific things where you
Oh,
can actually go on
wow.
your own journey of My America and see the art that is like, like just left discarded or left behind.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a continuum of like the tumbleweeds and tire treads and garbage pieces that I've done that have had multiple like lives.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It's like these ideas kind of get woven in different ways and they surface in different ways. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm working on now, and I can't wait to get out from under it. But it's been this incredible journey, and I've done photographs and videos and sculptures, and I'm working on a couple books, and it's just kind of one of the most interesting things I've done is a series of prisons and schools. Um, that was fascinating because I GPSed prisons and schools. So I went as an American, I went where the locals go. No one would go where I went who's a tourist. So I actually went through the heart of America in a way that is truly seeing like a part of America that everyone who's a local would see.
Yeah.
And I'm photographing prisons and schools, and the uh, kind of piece is the idea of a prison and a school next to each other, upside down, side by side, called "What's Wrong with This Picture?" And the obvious is like this: the systems are both so messed up, and they're you can do hospitals too.
Yeah.
And you think of America, it's like it's hard not to be political. It's hard not to you know race comes into the equation. It's like it's impossible to go out there and not respond to the things you're seeing or witnessing.
Yeah. Absolutely, and man, I've seen some of the work, the photographs, and they're just incredible. It's amazing how it transforms when you flip it upside down. Like I remember maybe maybe it was something you had posted on Instagram or something like that, and seeing it upside down, just the way it transforms the way you see and think of it, not only as an actual physical thing, but also as it makes you rethink the institution of it all too.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it, literally and metaphorically, because literally they're architectural. I'm playing with architecture.
Yeah.
I'm tweaking like that the architecture from above. It's the juxtaposition is completely opposite, but it still works because it's architecture against the sky. But it's more like, wow, is that like the Millennium Falcon, right down like satellite dish,
Yeah.
I mean, but just kind of the what was so fascinating about them is that they're all, it's like one system, really,
Yeah.
weird way, in a scary way,
Yeah.
but it's
Absolutely. One more question before I let you go, because I think there's something interesting, at least to my curious mind, that you talked about. One, I really like the idea of how you tied together the evolution of some of the work that you've done that is you've always been kind of drawn to, but then it evolved. So like talking about the tire treads, the
yeah,
tumbleweeds, and then that into sort of American landscape. I really like that evolutionary process. But then two, another thing that I'm just interested in is it's a big project. My America, everything you described sounds like, whoa, that's
yeah.
a big picture thing. When you went out into America, when you went out, did you say, I'm going to film, photograph? Like, did you know in your mind what you were going to do? Or were you like, I'm going to collect a lot of what's out there and then make it into, like, what was the
Yeah.
inspiration as
Well,
you?
at first I really didn't, and I thought I should, but I just went out there and I thought kind of like I'm going to react. And then I realized after the first trip, I drove, I don't know, like 8 states. I did, I-10 to LA from here, and then I went up, came through Colorado a little bit, and I realized, okay, I need a better game plan. Like,
Mm,
but I learned a lot in that first trip, like how long it takes. I learned one thing that's really interesting. It's a good point. If you're ever driving through America and you're basically looking for affordable hotels and eating normal food, not decadent or anything, it costs $1 a mile.
oh,
Basically, if I drive 1,000 miles, it costs me $1,000
wow. Okay.
to for yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like clockwork. I mean, it was like I
That's
think it was 8,000 miles, and it's the way I could figure out my budgeting though. Budgeting was a hard one, but that helped me. But what I did was I had a list. I had a short list of like 10 things
okay.
of specific projects that all required going to all 50 states. Like I collected soil. One of my favorite pieces is I collected cans of dirt from Cafe Bustelo. I emptied the coffee cans and put them in a bag, and they're in the freezer still. I drink that still. But I feel like when I cross the state line, I put my hazards on, get out, collect dirt sample, put the lid on it, right, Arizona, put it in there. Now I have all 50 of them, and you open the cans and you put them on a pedestal on the ground. Every single earth tone is different in every state, and it's stunning. It's just like, and that's America. And that piece alone kind of says a lot about our how each state is one America, but how each one has its own unique personality.
Absolutely.
Like what makes Montana special and makes it Montana? what makes Texas Texas, what separates us from Colorado and Arizona and New Mexico, And
Hmm.
so that piece just kind of took care of itself, and it was like one of my favorite pieces, just dirt in a can. And then the other, so I had a list, and I took a self-portrait using Instagram, and I'm going to do a silly little coffee table book of Instagram photos, just literally like a toilet side book. But it's kind of cool, it's
Yeah.
just another way to kind of in a snapshot document the trip. And I set up an Instagram thing called My America, which is not very elaborate, but that's what I'm using the images for. And then I photographed the state line, like a tourist.
Yeah.
So I did
We've
that.
all done that.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that. Now I have them all, and I'm like, I could do some cool like photogravure project, like processes. You could do so many things with like one photograph
Hmm.
through process. You could reshoot a photograph. You could cut it in pieces, make collage out of it. You could turn it into a three-dimensional piece.
Hmm.
You can, take it to a print process and take another photograph of it, make it a photogravure, and then I could like right now I want to do photogravures of some of the photographs and do a limited edition series of prints and have the dirt on
Oh,
kind of put into the ink,
yeah.
And so there's just kind of it keeps going, in
Yeah.
terms of. But I started with a list of
Okay.
things and to do the video, and you know, and
Yeah.
I think it's important to kind of you got to edit, and unlike my talking, you have to edit.
That's great. No, I think that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for adding this supplemental piece to the talk. Really appreciate it. Anything else you want to add before we go?
I don't think so. I think the biggest thing is like just man, have faith in what you're doing. You know, I mean, that's one thing that drives me. It's like you just have to have belief. You have to believe in what you're doing, and everything's cool, man. If you have faith, that intangible things, just like it kind of gives you the confidence, it gives you the security, it gives you the peace of mind to when times are hard to get through whatever it is. Just
Yeah.
that's it.
Dale, how are you this evening?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So I think we've
Here we are.
it's very particular, but we have set a record, I think, because this is now our third conversation in three locations with the same Zoom. So I think we win as far as
Right
that.
on, man. We're paving the path.
That's right. That's exactly right.
More like blazing saddles.
Yeah, exactly right. Thank you so much. So much great information there, and I love how you spoke to a balance between sort of speaking to your early career and the things that got you going and drove you to where you are now. The one thing I want to touch on in particular is, well, first, folks, make sure you hit that Q&A button, ask your questions, send those in for Bale, and I'll relay those on to him. But the place I want to go right now is uh, artist and gallery, right? We touched on that a little bit, but I want to dive into that a little bit more. You talked about how important that is as almost like a retirement plan. But I also want to talk about that balance of um, working with other artists and curating and bringing things to your own gallery. I feel like an artist would be positioned much better to be able to do that because of all the connections you have. But I want to ask, how do you go about looking for and identifying the artists that you want to bring and show at your gallery?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's a really great situation for me that has kind of eliminated, really not totally eliminated, but I don't have hardly any gallery representation at this point in time. At one point, I had multiple galleries in different regions, and it was real traditional and kind of I would do it the way artists have been doing it for years. Is you'd have a gallery represent you and you'd do work and take it to the gallery, and then they would hustle it and sell it, and then what they didn't sell they'd send back, and you'd go back in your studio and work and do it all over again. And I did that so long, and it just didn't seem like it was paying off. It's like, as in some cases, losing money, like traveling, or it just wasn't. It was just getting tired. So I was trying to think of a fresh way to kind of do, make a living, a different way to go about it. And earlier in the 90s, I had a gallery, and next to it was my studio. And I did that briefly as an experiment, and it really worked. It was like I would get, you know, people from openings would go not only to the show I was exhibiting, but then they would come into my studio. So each wave was kind of beneficial. So they kind of, I piggybacked off of each other. And so, but it got in the way of doing my work. So I put that on the shelf. But then more recently, when I started My Americas, when this all came about, uh, which was this just daunting body of work, and I needed to raise money privately because I wasn't going to wait around for this same old system to kind of take care of me, because it just wasn't going to. So, incredible patron who I approached pretty much funded this My America, and it gave me a green light to kind of just focus on that particular body of work and move forward. And simultaneously, my studio had flooded, so I was looking for a new studio. And I came across this kind of commercial complex called Canopy in Austin, which there were a couple of art galleries there, and a bunch of art studios. And I was looking for a studio primarily. And so basically, I made a deal to get my rent lowered and said I would agree to do a gallery on the storefront part where the window was. And then in the back, I just used my private studio. And so that was like 4.5 years ago. And I've done 25 shows now. And it's just the BCA gallery, or Bale Creek Allen Gallery. And it's in Austin. But it's like the first show I did, and what determined like why I decided to show the artist, was Daniel Johnston, who's like this celebrated Austinite who not only he delves into music, he's a great songwriter. A lot of people have covered his tunes, but he's also a visual artist. And I knew him back in the 90s, so it made sense to kind of start with someone that, had deep roots in Austin and that I had a friendship with.
Yeah.
And so that just kicked this thing off, and it was during South by Southwest, and we had a great turnout. And then I had a list just through my life. I literally started with the paper list of 40 artists. I just wrote down names of people. If I did a gallery, who would I want to show? And I made my own list, and then I just started asking people. And I mean, thus far, I've been fortunate, but it's like artists are a generous community, and it's just a beautiful back and forth. And so those openings and all those artists draw different crowds, and all all the while I have my studio next door. So the people that go to each show, there's different people, and then there's the same regulars, but then they get to see my new work, my consistent work. So I consistently sell my own work out of my studio and focus on selling the artists I'm representing. And it's a total win-win. It's like this crazy effective kind of business model to be
Yeah.
an artist. It's working for me.
And I imagine that is attractive to artists to know that you're not just a gallery or owner and looking at the business side and
Yeah.
the exhibition side, but you are actually an artist yourself. And so you know the ins and outs, the pain points, and the difficulties that sometimes comes with getting your work shown. And I imagine that is attractive to other artists that you work with.
Yeah, I think it's really important that initially I wanted to do it like, 20% for the gallery, 80% for the art. I wanted to be an art gallery for the artist. And I realized it's just economically, just the rent I'm paying alone, I can't afford to do that. I'm a one-man show, and I'm not a trust fund kid or any of this. And it's like, so the artists understand each other and they get it. It's like, and that's why I think artists in most communities are so generous, because we're all in this together, and you're pretty much screwed if you don't help each other out. But it's like you can be in this incredible place because of this generous community. And I think uh, to I'm sitting here wearing a hat, but to wear both hats as a gallerist and an artist is beneficial for being an artist to work on that side of it too. You learn a lot about,
Yeah.
kind of both sides of that coin, and
I'm sure it helps
but
you as an artist, right? Whenever you're looking to get your stuff shown or look to you like because you know both sides of it, I'm sure you know the language to speak to gallery owners and to get, you know, to make
yeah,
connections and make things happen for yourself.
yeah, to a certain degree, absolutely. And then, also just as far as being an artist running a gallery and that trust with other artists, I think it's more of a lowbrow kind of thing just across the board. It's not an intimidating type of environment. It's very accessible. It's like we serve tequila, it's come on in. 90% of the people there are like, just chilling and having a good time and just want to go out and drink free beer or whatever. And that's fine. And like, I am so open to anyone coming through the doors because it just rubs off. It's like this excitement and this environment of these openings. It's kind of infectious. And sooner or later, that's how people become collectors, by
Yeah,
being exposed to that. And, but artists get it. It's like, I tell them right off the bat, look, there's certain economical things I can't do that most galleries can do. And so we're pretty good about just every situation's different with each artist, and we kind of work out the details, but it's real mutual and it's real even, and it works out.
uh, it's obviously, the thing in the middle of what our country is facing, and I know what you're looking at as far as being a business owner, but specifically someone who owns a gallery, which really relies on big events, openings,
Yeah.
those types of showings. I just want to know, what has that been like for you, and what are the challenges that you face, and what do you see on the horizon for just showings in the future?
Well, I'll tell you, it's been. I mean, in terms of monetary and the way the gallery has run, it's basically just shut down. I mean, the parking lot over there, there's like 150 businesses, and it's crickets. There was nothing going on for 5, 6 months. Nothing. Go over there, you'd see one car maybe. And so my business dropped like about 90%. And it's like I canceled 2 shows, which was good because I had them spread out, and I canceled 2 shows, and then the third one I decided to do, which was I don't know, like 3.5 months ago, and it was an artist named Shelley Tolman from South Africa. Originally lives in L.A. Great painter, but we talked about it, and I was like, I got to do. If I don't keep going, I'm going to close the doors. Now, basically for me, it's like being on kind of the horizon of a brand new frontier, like literally like 52 card pickup. I mean, in terms of business and trying to figure out what am I going to do, it kind of amounted to that. It's like I'm desperate to kind of keep this business going, or I'm going to have to do something totally different. And so I did the opening, and I did it responsibly, but instead of 400 or 1,000 crazy people at an opening, we had like a total of 40 maybe, and they just trickled in. It was real responsible, done on an off night and all that. And it felt good to do it, but it was depressing. I mean, it kind of took the wind out of my sails. And but then I did another one, and it was a little better, and I knew what to expect. And so I'm still maintaining this. And the show that I have up now is the second one I've done during COVID. And it opened not long ago, like 3 weeks ago. And it's June Kaneko from Omaha, Nebraska, who's a world-renowned ceramicist who does the largest ceramics in the world. He's incredible. And I've got these 4 heads that he did in Cuernavaca, Mexico, that are they're like 6 feet tall, and they're all crying. And so it's very timely and not by mistake. So he did these pieces because he's been ill, and they were personal, and they were done in early 2020. And he's got a condition where his tear ducts, he'll cry like every 10 minutes and has to dry his eyes. And so these pieces were real personal, but it's right before COVID happened, and they look like they were made for COVID. They're these huge heads crying, and they have masks on them, dripping, and it's just like potent. And so, I really struggled financially. Like Shelley's work, normally I would have sold quite a few of those paintings, and I still have them. Like, I'm going to hold on to them. We'll get something going. I sold one of those, and they're stunning, and they were reasonably priced. No reason I wouldn't have sold more. And then June's are a bigger price point. So I've found what's helped me is selling fewer pieces for a lot more money. So some of my marquee pieces, some of my larger bronze sculptures, or like June's work, which is kind of, quite substantial compared to a lot of the artists I show. So if you can, sell less, but for more money, then you can make it work. And that's how I've been able to make it work. But it's been a crapshoot, man. I mean, it's like tough.
Yeah. And on the artistic side, on your own work, what has this time done either for you, or what are the challenges, and maybe what are some of the silver linings as an artist, as a creator, that this pandemic and this period has had on your work and your output?
It's, I would say that part, just the cadence of going to my studio and coming and going, hasn't really changed. I could still get in my truck, even when there were like basically lockdowns with stipulations of if you're going to work, you're good. And I was felt safe doing that. I get in my car from my garage and drive straight to my studio. It's just me. So that part of it didn't change. But I think the overall climate, like literally the depression, the highs and the lows, just the emotional kind of taxing effect has affected all of it. It's affected everything. And so you try to stay optimistic, it's just, but now there's just so many layers. It's not just COVID, it's just black, it's the racial tension, the political tension, the divide in America, and all of these things kind of culminating at one time is pretty heavy duty. And so one of the responses to that, I've done a couple shows for COVID that were like benefit shows where we did masks and sold them, and did online art exhibits and donated the money to the homeless, or really good causes. And so I've always open to participating in that type of thing. And then the other one I'm doing is I've been working on a racism show, and it's titled Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And for years now, I've been working on it, actually, like kind of piecing together the idea of it. And I remember like 3 years ago, someone saying how timely it was. And I said, man, it's always timely. And now you look at now, and I'm doing a pretty amazing show with 15 artists from all over America, that each artist is a different racial ethnicity. And
Yeah.
they're addressing, the subject matter of racism. And basically that's the only guideline. Just go for it. So
Is that something that's going to be done during this period? Is that like the next show you're going to do? Or are you going to try to make that happen if and when things get easier to do live events?
well, the next show I have is at the Gallery, and it's not my own work. It's John Doe of X and Michael Mogavero, who's a great retired professor at UT, who's a great painter. And they were friends in high school and did these pieces, so they kind of reconnected. That's going to be in December, but the racism show is going to debut at Umlauf Sculpture Garden here in Austin, and that's going to be in March, mid-March. It'll be up for 4 or 5 months. So
You had spoke to different tensions going on, social tensions, cultural tensions, political tensions, and you do that in the light of doing a show as big and as broad as something called My America. Do the things that have happened, the election, the things with going on with Black Lives Matters and the protests for social justice that we've seen in the country, does it shine a new, like art always can be seen in a new lens depending on what's
yeah.
happening around us. Does it shine a new lens? Does it give a new frame, a new context to the work that you did traveling across the country? What do you think about that, and how has it made you think differently about that project?
Well, I think it's interesting because I've been focused more now. I think I've shifted more to where I'm focusing on this racism show with everything that's going on now. So all that energy You know, it's almost like I'm not usually one to kind of look backwards, you know, although sometimes that work reminds you of things. But I have had that thought of like, wow, if you know that just a short period ago when I was going through America, none of this was going on. First of all, I was able to go through America, and I was in crowds. I was in Times Square. I was staying in hotels. I was like, now I can't do that. So yeah, I mean, if I did it now, it would be a totally different mindset and body of work. But that's the beautiful thing about art. It's kind of like making a record. I tell people like, and I've done a lot of demos and I'm guilty of it, but it's like at a certain point you got to record it, do it, and be done with it and move on to the next thing instead of just, always, kind of
Yeah.
trying to add to it and get it just right. It's never going to be just right. And you'll always learn retrospectively looking at it. You'll learn from that, but you got to put a cap on it and move on. So I'm kind of at that capping point of my America, but it is interesting to think about the thoughts of our country. It's definitely changed a lot, in terms of what's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me, the great German filmmaker Werner Herzog always said that he never finished a film; he just abandoned them. And I imagine that's
Yeah.
the same with art projects. At some point, you just say, "I have to move on."
Yeah. For me, I mean, I can relate to that, but it's like I'm the Virgo, right? So it's like everything has to have for me, and it's my own personality type. It's like I have to have like a final point or an ending. It's
Yeah.
like the end. Maybe I don't. I don't know, but I feel like I.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, you talk about the difficulties of having a gallery and putting on shows and doing those types of things. I mean, does that really pull from you to be able to have that other side of yourself as an artist to be like, well, man, I'm spending so much time thinking about the business that I have sort of haven't left enough time for me to be an artist. Is that happening to you? And what
Yeah,
do you do to kind of get past that?
there is part of that, and you know, the good thing is I enjoy working with other artists. I enjoy hanging shows, installing them. I like June's show that's up right now. I had as much fun that entire experience working with June as an artist and taking those things out of the crates and getting excited and putting them exactly where I wanted them and lighting them and doing all that. And so that's still a creative satisfaction. But it definitely takes away from the time in my studio and from my own work. But it also benefits me because it's this new kind of formula that's helped me make a living to where I can afford the other things in life that I enjoy to do. So it's kind of like, I'm always trying not to keep that balance healthy. And if it feels out of whack, then I could lean over to one or kind of I don't have to book another show or I'll do my own show, you know, at my own gallery. It's like, yeah, I can do whatever I want. So it hasn't been a huge problem. It was a problem in the 90s when I first did it because I'm an artist and I'm trying to do a gallery and I'm like, it's getting in the way.
Mhm.
I just need to devote my time. And that kind of took off that decision was right then. But this decision's kind of helped me in a different way live a more comfortable life and I'm able to do different things that I wouldn't do otherwise having the gallery. So it's a give and take a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything that you're working on now currently? What kind of projects are you looking at taking on now? You talked about, putting the cap on something and moving on. I mean, I'm sure your mind is always going somewhere and thinking about different projects, but is there something specific that you're focused on, you individually as an artist, that is really starting to take form and take shape?
Well, I'm still kind of at the tail end and finishing this My America and it's the bookmaking part. So I'm going through like thousands of photos and I've decided to consolidate it from 3 books to one big just book, My America book, just because economics and because of timing and everything. And So I'm going to finish that, and that's going to consume me for, you know, till the end of the year at least, you know. And then I've been playing a lot of drums in my studio. Um, and so you know, I love to write songs, but I kind of neglect that a lot. And so I think I'm just going to do some other things like that in my studio just to kind of feel it. I'm kind of in between, you know. I have to admit, man, this COVID thing has just kind of thrown me off. It's
Yeah.
thrown me off to where I wasn't sure if I was, you know, going to have to go get a regular job at one point, like in April or May or something. I was like, you know, hemorrhaging rent money and all those things. So economics, they're real, you know, and it's like, so, you know, I don't have any definitive thing, but I'm so excited of that like clean studio walls again kind of mentality. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I know it's ahead of me. I'm still trying to just finish some of these other things. And then I'm already kind of looking to the horizon, but it hasn't really kind of resonated yet or come to me or, you know,
Yeah, of what to take on next. I can
yeah,
understand that. You know, especially in the environment we're in, where we really don't know what the next 6, 12 months look like, especially in both spaces. I mean, what's tough about the situation you're describing is as an artist, you depend on galleries and exhibitions and showings, and
yeah,
as a gallerist, you also depend on those types of things. And so, you know, you have those both of those avenues, but they are both really taking a hit right now, and so
yeah.
it's a difficult thing to look at the horizon. But it sounds like you're optimistic about what can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I've you know, luckily have a little bit of a savings account and I'm able to trickle it out and kind of get by. And there's a lot of people, a lot of artists that are a lot worse off. There are a lot of people out there that are way worse off. And so, man, I mean, I live a blessed life. I live a just absolute blessed life. And I have nothing to complain about. Like my problems are nothing compared to a lot of people. So, you know, I am generally kind of upbeat and happy because you know I don't take any day for granted or any situation I'm in. So um,
Absolutely. Yeah, right on. Well, Belle, thank you so much for your time and for your energy and for your passion. We appreciate you sharing your story, your advice, and your wisdom with our audience tonight.
absolutely, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Paul.
Yeah. All
Thanks
right.
to everyone else.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to everyone who's on. Remember, this is night 3 with Bale, tomorrow, night 4 with Bucka. Make sure you tune in. And once again, I'll reiterate that registration that you've done is good for every single night. You don't have to re-register. Just click that link again. Show right back up tomorrow night at 7:30, and we'll be talking with Bucka. And then Friday, we'll be on with Terry, who's going to close us out for the Allen residency. Thank you so much, Bale. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Thanks, Paul. See you guys. Night.